Our assignment this week is to paint an artichoke. If you weren't able to find one, you certainly can use another green specimen. But the reason that we choose the artichoke is because it's a nice size, and then it also is not as difficult to paint as you might think. The fact that the artichoke is broken up into partitions or to sections like this makes it much easier than you might realize, because you can paint a section at a time and get the entire painting finished without a great deal of stress. And you don't have to worry about painting large areas. You can paint small areas, except for the initial tea wash and initial shadow situation. Now, this poor artichoke had been trimmed of its stem. If you can find something with a stem, or if you have one with a stem, it's better. If not, you can probably see where the stem comes off here. And when I did the drawing for this, I did, in fact, add a stem. And then I will look and see if I can find another specimen, or I'll even go online and see if I can find an artichoke with a stem that I can use as a reference to complete the painting. First of all, you need to light this properly, which means that you need to take your light source and bring it down, or bring it to where it's going to be over the left shoulder if you're right-handed, and then photograph this on a white background. You want to photograph this on a white background so that you can see all your details. And I did do that, and so I have a photograph of my artichoke. And the reason I do this is it really helps me to see, or to have, first of all, everything doesn't change because this artichoke will change. But it tells you kind of, what the colors were when you originally photographed it. If we look at this one, at this point, it's pretty close. It hasn't changed much. But what I did was I did wrap this in damp paper towel and put it in the refrigerator when I wasn't working on it. But what the photograph does, it helps you to see where your highlights are and to see where your shadows are. And I use it for that purpose because it really is a good aid to the process. I might even take this and change it to black and white in order to even better see the shadow areas. So what you need to do to start is you need to, of course, get yourself a good drawing. And if you look at this artichoke, you'll notice that the way that these bracts line up, they line up in a definite formation. And we call this formation a Fibonacci sequence. It appears in nature in all kinds of plants, whether it's stems or bracts, but you'll find this to be a characteristic that is prevalent in the plant world. It's a mathematical formula where you would take your first two numbers, add them together, then you take your second and third numbers and add them together. And what happens is it multiplies, and the number of bracts or stems or whatever multiply in that sequence. You can't see it here because this is a hidden area, but you can start to see how you start to get more and more bracts as you work away from the center. So once you have your photograph and you're dealing with this Fibonacci pattern, what you can do, if you're not certain about it, is put a piece of tracing paper over the top and draw in where you see this pattern of direction that these bracts are taken. And it does go in two directions. So what you end up with then is a guide that sort of looks like this. This is just a technique that you can use if you're not sure. So when you get to your sketch, you can put in your basic form and then add your directional lines for where the brats are going to start to divide. So each of these intersections here is basically where you might have a brat. What you want to do next is take that information and then apply these details. Now you might find there are some minor adjustments to be made, but at this stage you want to develop the form of the artichoke and then have a final tracing off of this good drawing that you've done and have a very clean line drawing, and this is what you're going to use for your transfer. So here I have a nice clean sheet of watercolor paper. I'm going to take this drawing and tape the top edge onto the watercolor paper. If you're using the trace and transfer method where you're actually going over your lines on the back with a 2B pencil, do that before you attach it to the watercolor paper. And then if you're using a transfer sheet that you've either made or purchased, just lay that underneath. Now, if this is too dark for you to see, just take another piece of clean tracing paper, lift this because now you've got it attached, it's not going to move. And if you put another layer of tracing paper down, you can see your drawing much more easily. So this is just a matter now of taking a 3 or 4H pencil with a very sharp point and transferring your drawing to your watercolor paper. So you should be able to see this entire drawing. Now this is just the transfer. What you need to do at this point is you need to go back over this drawing with a hard pencil, a 3H or 4H, and very lightly redraw what you have on your initial drawing. The reason I do this is because usually the transfer is very soft graphite, and you don't want to have that smudging your watercolor. At this point, you should be looking at your specimen very carefully and making any changes or corrections that you might see that were missed in the original drawing or that didn't transfer accurately enough. I can't stress this enough because the better the drawing is, the better the painting's going to be. So look at things again and just check and make sure everything is where you think it's supposed to be. For instance, I'm going to make a little adjustment here on this thorny spike that's on the top of each one of these brats. And it looks to me like I see a little bit of the inside, so I want to add that. And then I'm just going to go back over everything. You don't have to press real hard because you don't really want a very dark pencil line. You want it to be fairly light, but you do want to be able to see it enough when you start to paint. I think this redrawing stage is an important one. This is my way of working. I find that it gives me a lot more control over the final work. I don't like to leave anything to chance in the process of painting. So I'm going to go over these lines. I'm assuming most of them are going to be where they should be. And then if I see anything that needs a slight adjustment, I will make that adjustment based on the specimen in front of me. Draw carefully. So what I'll do, once I've got this all drawn, then I will take my kneaded eraser and I will gently lift off the transfer carbon that I used, and all you'll have is a nice line drawing. And then we'll go to the painting stage.